I'm going to be riding Rhett again and kind of critiquing how I used to do some things. So right now I'm getting his bridle set up and then I'm going to hop on him here. And I think at the time I was not paying attention to his cues, and I definitely think that he is just like overstimulated by the value of food that I'm using. And I don't exactly remember what it was that I was using. But he's walking off here, so I kind of just end up bending him a little bit to one side. And he's not obviously being bad. He's not running away. He's barely moving, but I do want him to stand still. And I think a big part of this is that I'm reinforcing a lot for those go forward behaviors like you saw in the last couple of videos. See, I'm trying to kind of get my girth situated and he wants to walk off. I'm trying to ask him to stand still, bend him to the other side. And he eventually does, but it's very, very slow and like he's not like running away and fearful like you see this a lot of the times when a horse does this behavior. I think all he's thinking about is, oh, well, what she wants is me to go forward and walk or trot or canter because that's what I've been reinforcing the most. So that's why it's super important to reinforce the opposite behavior as well, especially with horses like Rhett. Rhett was an off the track thoroughbred. Most of those horses are extremely forward horses. So you need, if at least 50% of your time on the opposite behavior. So in this case, stopping, standing still, downward transitions, things like that, but for him, probably more than 50%, probably like 70%, um, because he's already bred to go forward. He's internally motivated and reinforced for going forward, and then he has this huge reinforcement history of that. And then now I'm like picking those things to reinforce, and then it's just getting kind of out of hand. So I do think that I want to say that I might have been using like a little pieces of grain or maybe like actual horse treats. So definitely way too high of a value. You can see he's dropping and he's just like too not you don't see him excited and like moving around, but he's too stimulated. He's like overstimulated. So um definitely lowering the value. So probably all the way to like chopped hay for him. Because I think later on I did change the value to Timothy pellets. I think it was still a little bit much. So chopped hay for him or just actual hay if he would have worked for that. Um, because he was just it was too exciting for him. And a lot of the stuff that I did with him was mixing positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and just kind of like picking those certain behaviors that I would click and feed. Um, so that was definitely probably confusing for him, and then exciting because I didn't build the behaviors like I do now with like just mostly positive reinforcement and shaping those behaviors and building in more relaxation. I didn't know those things at the time, so you can see how that's making him a lot different than my other horses now. So he's still kind of walking off like I don't want to necessarily like punish him or pull him around or anything, but I definitely should be feeding way more often for him standing still and stopping. But right now he's just thinking I'm supposed to go forward, so I'm going to continue to go forward. So that I think is my biggest deal with him. So now I'm going to actually ask him to go forward. So I think that last time I had him walk on and do some steering, I guess, and then go forward. And still he's a little too, not necessarily collected, but thinking backwards here. You can see his little trot. I would rather he stretch out and go forward and move forward, but at the time I was more reinforcing that. And then watching the video, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't really the nicest trot. So, I mean, but everybody learns somewhere and starts from somewhere. So this is kind of what we're working with. What I mostly want to show, besides like critiquing the things that I could change and would change now, was his cantering transitions, which do look really nice. I just needed to balance them out with the downward transitions and standing still. So that's pretty much the main goal of this video, which you'll see here in a little bit, but I do want to talk about some of the other stuff as well. So ask him to walk on. So again, his walk is decent, and he has a really slow walk where he's thinking about me and thinking back to me, which is nice. And then I have that at the trot as well, but I would like a little bit more impulsion with that at the trot. I'm okay with it at the walk at this point, but more of the trot, and then again, those standing still behaviors where we're really lacking there. So we'll go ahead and ask him to trot. I should be asking for a little bit more forward trot than before. And he did this thing where he didn't really want to go out on the rail for a while at the trot. He would just kind of go to the middle because I would end up like standing there and resting there a lot. So you could see him like cut off from the rail a lot. He would do that quite a bit. This time I'm steering him, but that first part he did there where he's pulling off and he's coming to that middle, that I trained on accident as well. Is I would I would ask for more and he would be like, not really wanting to, or he would go really fast into trot or something, some other behavior that I didn't really want, was kind of scary. And so then I would bend him to a stop in the middle and stop him. And he's like, well, I want to stop here. So I was like accidentally reinforcing him going into the middle and resting and kind of creating my own problem here. Um, I think I was reinforcing a little bit better trot there. Again, watching it back, it wasn't that great. And again, I need to be reinforcing that standstill. So at the time, I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to let him stand still because that's, reinforcing on its own. But for this particular horse, probably not true. A horse like Sebastian, yes, but not Rhett. So here I'm actually feeding him at the standstill, so that is definitely an improvement. That's good, but I only did it once, and then you can kind of compare. I've already fed him twice for going forward. So, and throughout the video, you'll see it'll be a lot more weight put into this going forward movement. So I'm feeding those a lot more than I am the standing still. So I spent a lot of time standing still, but not a lot of time reinforcing that behavior. So that's the difference, and that's the thing I didn't know at the time. So, because he does have a really good standstill for the most part. He'll walk off a little bit, and his main issue was wanting to walk off while I was getting on. Um, but I definitely think that I created that because he didn't always do that, and I think really once I started reinforcing those go forward behaviors is when that really started. And I think that was purely like he was ready to go earn those reinforcers. So a lot of the time when you're using negative reinforcement, that's not the case because there's no reinforcers to earn. It's reinforcers to avoid, and that's going to be usually a fear thing. This is a little bit better trot here, a little bit better, not the greatest, but better. I'd like him still to be moving out a little bit more, but he's maintaining the trot, and that's what I'm looking for here. Is he really would want to be? That's a much better trot. He really want to just be cantering. He's like, can we canter now? Can we canter now? And he would be doing that, and so this looks better. He's staying in that trot. He's maintaining a decent speed. He's not thinking about just cantering every stride. So that was nice, and that's worth reinforcing. But again, now I've reinforced going forward 3 times and standing still just once. So you got to really pay attention to how much weight you put into each behavior. So yeah, that's an important part. And then again, just standing still is not just reinforcing in itself to this horse. So even though I'm standing still here, he's just kind of waiting for his next moment to go forward. So I might fast forward through him just staying still here. So I fast forward through a bit, but then I think I'm reinforcing him, or I'm messing with my girth. I might be just messing with my girth. I thought I was reinforcing him and being like, yay, finally did it. But I think, and then see, he thought, okay, well, I'm going to go do I'm going to go find a behavior that will earn me reinforcement. And then he wanted to walk off, and then I prevented him from doing that. So that's another common thing that can go wrong. And then here I'm just still asking him to stand still, which he does nicely. It's just, I'm surprised he's really actually standing this long for how little I'm reinforcing it. So now I've asked him to walk on. Again, he could move more forward in this walk. It's just kind of not like fully there. It's just, I don't know. It's just a weird walk for him specifically. See, he's thinking about going into the canter here, but he gets super collected and backward. And then I'm like, no, I just kind of pick up on one rein and bring him back to trot there. That's a much better trot. Because I was just asking for trot, and that's what I was saying earlier, where he was always kind of anticipating that canter. And then there I'm asking him to stop, and then he reinforcing because he did do that trot, and it was a decent trot, and he didn't think about going forward. Again, now that's what 4 or 5 times I've reinforced standing or going forward, and once standing still. So I want to point that out because I didn't realize it while I was doing it. I can definitely clearly see it now that I'm watching the video back, and this video is from 2019, so it's been 4 years. So definitely learned a lot in that time. So again, I'm going to fast forward through him standing still. Okay, so I've asked him to go forward again. Little baby walk. Watching this back, I really want him to walk out a bit more. Especially at the time, I was wanting to do some dressage stuff with him when we did do some dressage tests and shows. So yeah, I think it's definitely a big difference, his walk in the round pen versus in the arena. You really just don't see a lot of my arena work with him because I was filming on a GoPro or two GoPros, and it was really hard to edit that in the arena. So he does move better in there, and I'll try to show somebody that. This looks like a nice trot, moving out better. Not necessarily thinking about. I think he's just tripping there, thinking about cantering. So this looks good, maintaining it well. And then I asked for the canter there, and that's what I really wanted to show was that nice collected loose rein canter that I have on a voice cue that I taught with pause reinforcement. I wasn't perfect, but it was really good. That was the best canter transitions that I've ever trained. So before it was just negative reinforcement, you know, to your typical canter transitions, but I wanted to show specifically with Rhett because he did those the nicest. And then after he does it, he can stand still and just hang out. So it worked really well for him, and I wasn't doing it perfectly. If I would have reinforced a lot more for him standing still, it would have been so much better. In those downward transitions, it would have been just so much easier, and I would have had a lot less frustration. So, but I wanted to show that because he does have some very nice canter transitions. So then we can go into trot, and I would really want him at this point to not be thinking about cantering. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to reinforce him just going into trot. But again, I think we're at number 6 of me reinforcing him for going forward and 1 at standing still. So allowing him to stand still, but again, for depending on the horse, that might not be reinforcing in itself. So I'm going to fast forward through the standstill. Okay, I'm going to ask him to walk on here. So he did stand still for quite a while, but again, I need to reinforce that. So decent walk, good trot transition. Okay, trot. But he's not thinking about going into the canter on his own, so this is nice. And then I asked for that canter transition. He did a couple of nice strides, and then he kind of fell out of it. You can see him pick up his head. He kind of loses his hind end, and I kind of just bend him down. So it really wasn't that bad. I really could have asked him to keep going, but it just feels very off when he does that, and we're just going to try it again. So or just go back to just doing a try. I know he can do it like you just saw him do it the other way where he did a couple, there we go. Really nice strides, and I'm not really sure why I pulled him around that time because that looked pretty good to me. He does want to sometimes, like, he can only do so many balanced strides, so then he'll pick up his head and he'll kind of toss his head a little bit and he'll step out behind, like he kind of loses his hind legs. He just doesn't really have the strength for that. So, yeah, I should have just let him go. There we go. So just 2 strides. So he seemed like he could do 3 strides and then he kind of fell apart after that. So I shouldn't have bent him around, and I do need to be working on him maintaining that canter more like on the ground or on the lunge line so that he can be more well equipped for that while having a rider. I also, looking back, should have had him adjusted too. I think that would have definitely helped because he seems like he needed some body work at the time. But I wanted to show that those couple canter transitions.